Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the call. Yeah, we're literally just going to kick things off shortly here. So I knew people would join, and this is where that 10-minute break might come in handy. But yes, we are literally just about to kick things off. So kindly bear with us. Kemi is in charge. So when she wants us to proceed, we do proceed.
Oh my goodness.
I tried to get us to start the session a lot earlier, but Kemi was like, nope. So
okay, I think we should start now.
Yeah.
Okay. Good day, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar. And thank you to Chib and to Sheyi for also being here and for wanting to share their experiences with us. I would start by introducing the panelists. Sheyi Lisk-Carew is an accomplished entrepreneur and a seasoned professional with extensive experience in business strategy formulation, business transformation, and project management. He currently serves as a Chief Executive Officer of Oclas Group, a global organization that provides professional services to businesses, governments, and NGOs in the energy, oil, gas, and utility industry. With a strong educational background, Sheyi holds an executive MBA in international oil and gas, a master's in marketing management, and a Honors degree, CS engineering in computer systems engineering. He has a wealth of knowledge and expertise in areas such as process optimization, business strategy, market analysis, and project management. Welcome, Sheyi.
Thank you, Kemi.
Our next panelist is Chib. Nwokonkor is the chairman and CEO of Zanshuri. He previously worked as at the Ministry of Justice as a senior project manager. Chib Nwokonkor studied information technology and environmental science at the University of London and computer science at the University of Manchester. He went on to work as a senior project manager at the Ministry of Justice UK, holding the risk assessment team on consultation of changes to the criminal legal age in the UK. In 2014, Chib founded Zanshuri Limited, introducing a new breed of environmentally sensitive technology, encompassing security, robust engineering, and efficient design today for the world of tomorrow. Today, Chib Nwokonkor is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Zanshuri Holdings, a patent, investment, and intellectual property management business focusing on supporting and developing technological-centered breakthroughs with the potential of positively affecting everything we do. Welcome, Chib.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you on as well. So now, guys, I will leave you with Sheyi and Chib. Who wants to start? Sheyi, would you go first?
This is where I wish you did continue, actually. Kemi, I just did behind the scenes and listening because I must say, guys, I'm hoping we would learn a thing or two. And I'm sure a number of you wonder, why do we have these webinars? Yes, Oclas Consulting, we specialize in strategy and transformation, but we'd also think it's fair to sort of give back to the world, as I call it, where we sort of showcase with some of our partners, some of our clients, projects we've done, initiatives and solutions we have out there. And of course, just sort of a forum where we can discuss, share open, frank ideas, thoughts, and opinions, without getting judged or compromised or any of that. So this is really why we have this webinars. We did start this a while ago, but when COVID came in, we had to sort of slow things down, and I think I would say this on here, we'll probably be having a live face-to-face session sometime later this year, where we would obviously invite our various panelists and guests to a closed networking sort of session sometime in London. So we're really looking forward to that. So today it's all about harnessing green technology. There's a lot of talk about sustainability. There's a lot of talk about renewable energy. There's a lot of talk around how can we be a lot more efficient. But sometimes we feel or people don't seem to see what those solutions are. Now, within the group Oclas Consulting, we find, and we're very passionate about sustainability, and we factor this into our delivery methodology. In other words, when we're working with clients to help streamline how they function, to help optimize how they operate, to help integrate systems, we don't just do the people and process side of things. We also think about the technology, but what makes it more unique is technology that can save the whole global situation, more or less. And this is why we have Chib, who has kindly agreed to speak with us and join us on this forum, because he's got some high-level state-of-the-art technology that is actually saving businesses as much as 90% energy use with computers, more or less. So, I mean, companies all have laptops. Imagine if you have like 1,000 laptops and each laptop saves 90%. That is mind-blowing. And besides the laptops, I know he does servers. He has kindly invited me to his workshop before, where I've seen fantastic sort of systems. I saw the factory where they were manufacturing a server. Mind-blowing technology. So before I get into it, I think it will be worthwhile just sort of showcasing what the role of renewable energy is in the sustainability computing world. And for me, it's a case of we know energy is shifting. There's this talk about we would eventually be we'll no longer use oil and gas. I honestly don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think what's happening is there's going to be a hybrid where we're going to have integration of various energy sources, be it solar, solar powered, wind energy, and so many other factors that would sort of play a role. And depending on how much percentage of the energy you consume or you use, various incentives from the government would sort of help, with the businesses. So I think that's literally where it's going to go. I don't think oil and gas is going anywhere for now. However, we must try to do what we can individually and as businesses to sort of help drive this journey moving forward. So, Chib, what's your take on that? Where do you see the future going from an energy perspective? I know you do this fantastic solutions, but how do you see the marketplace?
Yeah, well, I really do think that there's a lot of logic in what you're saying. There is definitely going to be a hybrid kind of solution. I mean, that's the reality that we're living in now. Everyone's aware of the existence and proliferation of solar panels, of wind turbines, and of course, oil and gas, and, latterly coal here in the UK. But the reality is that we are using a combination of sources on a daily basis. The electricity that we use in our buildings, in our homes, in our businesses, we don't have the level of transparency that they actually get at the national grid, for example, at the energy producing hubs in the world. So as far as we're concerned, it's all the same thing. But the reality is we are living in the hybrid model today, and that's likely to persist for quite some time.
That's very well said. And I think this is why, would you say this is what triggered you to start this business? Was there a demand, when you were working with the Ministry of, was it Justice or in the government, more or less? What triggered you to go into this venture? Because it's a tough space. You have the likes of Dell, Apple, HP, and many other, Lenovo, and so many other brands out there who actually manufacture computers, but you were still able to be a lot more efficient than majority of them. So what triggered, what made you take that bold step?
Well, the reality is that I've always been interested in IT and technology as a whole. And I've always had a real passion for sustainability and the environment. This goes back to, my very early years. I was actually born in Nigeria, in West Africa, in a very rural part of Nigeria. So we didn't have the kind of luxuries that we enjoy here in the Western world in terms of, consistent electricity and water and things of this nature. So it was always quite clear to me that these were resources which needed to be protected and maintained in some way. And technology just married itself because it was something which I found very interesting. People say that, I think it was said that technology develops to a point where it becomes imperceptible, indistinguishable to magic. And, the very young me thought that was very interesting, really. And so what we're seeing now is that we're living in a world where technology is in everything that we do. We have these fantastic computers which we put in our pockets and we hold to our heads every day. We have powerful machines on our desks at home and at work. We have computers in our vehicles without even being aware of it. And they're literally ubiquitous. And of course, everything that we do on the internet is supported by data centers throughout the world. And the reality of all of that is there is a massive drain on energy being used by all of these different types of computer systems, of servers and so on. And so I just believe that it was necessary to look at how to reduce the energy consumption, or how to make it something which was more in line with what I felt were my ideals regarding the environment. And there shouldn't be a reduction in performance, there shouldn't be a reduction in capability. And I think that it's quite interesting that attention is being drawn on this sector now, because it marries itself also with what we're seeing in the automotive industry. There's this massive shift towards electric cars and electric vehicles. And people are saying, okay, yes, well, there may be limitations in terms of range, capability, and, environmental, climate factors. But what we're seeing is these are now improving at such a rate that it's quite clear that, electric vehicles will replace, fossil fuel powered vehicles in the foreseeable future. And I think that, something similar is happening in the technology space. Computers look different today than they looked 30 or 40 years ago.
This is true.
Yeah, they didn't really exist 40 years ago, to be fair. But what really piqued my interest was the fact that the internal architecture hasn't changed very much at all. So it was quite interesting to me to see how that could be changed, how that could be brought up to date. And I started doing my work on this many, many years ago. I'm not trying to age myself here, unfortunately. But I was quite interested in finding out how a computer's heat-producing components were called, things like the central processing unit, the hard drive, things of that nature, how you expelled the hot air from within the case, the enclosure of the computer. And so I saw these multiple instances of fans being used, very poor design, and, an almost a haphazard approach to motherboard layout. And I just thought, okay, if we can make small improvements, incremental improvements in the design, in the placement of heat-producing components, just understanding the basics of, physics and thermal performance, we can make improvements in the total energy consumption of each device, be it a laptop, a desktop, or a server. And now we're at the point where our most efficient designs are able to operate in a similar manner to equivalent systems from other manufacturers, whilst using, in many cases, 50% of the energy. With our most efficient, obviously, we're right the way up to 90% energy reduction. And that's really something quite special. But the reality is, if much of the world were to switch over to this kind of technology, we already understand, you don't have to be in the technology space to recognize that, the combination of data centers in use today use as much energy as a small country. But if you add into that the number of computers which are on desks in offices, in home offices, in schools, in hospitals, in public sector placements, that energy consumption is actually quite vast. So if we could reduce that energy consumption by, a significant amount, that would really make a positive impact on the environment that we live in today. So it's important. That's why I wanted to really get my teeth into it. And I'm glad I did so.
No, Chib, I am impressed, to think about how they started. And you're right. We use computers every day, be it mobile devices, cars. I didn't think about it, but yes, cars do have computers actually. And speaking of cars, you're very correct around the sustainability, because I believe a month ago or so, we were actually at Abu Dhabi speaking at the Sustainability Forum, Mobility Forum, and we focused more on the sustainability arm. And the panel was His Excellency, who is, of the ITL, which is the equivalent of the Transport for London, so one of the directors there, and another director from Mercedes Group, and it's impressive, the solutions that are being rolled out over the coming years, and how a lot of these car manufacturers are actually cutting down on, petrol or diesel powered car. And for those of us who are into cars, he even mentioned that there's a lot coming around fancy, so like a Maybach electric car, or like, the super cars we see now from the Mercedes are actually all going to be released in the electric version. So it's still exciting. And the reason I say this, people think when you think energy efficiency, it's boring, it's not the same, but it's like, no, I disagree, because there's a lot more, intelligence around how they do these things, and they're still fun, So I think for me, something you touched on, obviously technology plays a significant role in what, your business does. It'd be interesting to talk more about these green data centers, because everybody uses cloud computing these days. I mean, like almost every app is virtually subscription based because it's somewhere in the cloud. So there are servers being used. And for me, it'll be interesting to see what you say around various regulatory challenges, perhaps if that applies, because I know, how does it work? So just, it'll be useful to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a real concern because as our growing dependence on data continues to increase, obviously then our dependence on these remote data centers is, that increases also. It's a burden which countries have to face, and we're quite fortunate here at Zanshuri because we're associated with the government's all-party parliamentary group on energy use in data centers, which pertains, to the UK and EU. And what that does is it gives us an insight into the way that things are going. When you're looking at legislating for energy consumption in a data center, that's a massive step, obviously, and there are a lot of factors to address before something like that becomes final. But having an awareness of it, and especially, being involved in those discussions from a technical perspective and from a real world perspective, it gives us an insight that many other organizations are not able to enjoy, really. But it is necessary, it's important. Just as you pointed out, electric cars are becoming, more common, and they are replacing fossil fuel powered cars. We're going to get to a point where it's no longer acceptable to just throw in a number of servers of a specific design into a data center. It will be necessary to ensure that energy efficiency is one of the most important factors to consider at the stage of design of that data center. And, we're very happy to be involved in those discussions because yes, it's what we do, but we also know that it's something which is absolutely relevant, if not vital, for the future of humanity. It really is that important.
Well, Chib, I must say this is actually very, very informative, actually, and I'm sure the audience would agree. Again, Kemi kindly mentioned that if you have any questions, as we're obviously talking, I know you may not want to interrupt, so you kindly just type your questions in the sort of chat box, and Kemi would sort of address. If you want it to be anonymous, just directly message her, and then she would ask the question. But yeah, no, Chib, this is definitely very, very informative. Now, just moving on to the software optimization for energy efficiency, where do you see the role of software developers? And I'm sure you have an idea where I'm heading with this software engineers and this sort of roles, but we'll get there eventually. Where do you see, the role of software developers in creating energy efficient codes and optimizing applications to sort of reduce energy consumption? And of course, addressing the growing issue of electronic waste. What are the ways we can sort of explore to achieve reasonable recycling practices to minimize environmental impact and discarding, should I say, of devices, be it mobile devices or whatever, tablets and so on. So what's your take? The first question really is around software developers, Do you see them playing a key role with efficient coding, or is it strictly hardware based?
No, absolutely. Software is a massive, element of, total device energy consumption, really, because the code is actually what's used to tell the systems what to do. And there has been an awareness in tech circles, shall I say, of code just increasing in size and complexity. And, obviously, whenever we have, a new version of a popular operating system released or a new, web browser, for example, we see that it's quickly followed by updates, refinements, corrections. And these are necessary because code is just becoming so large. The amount of data which is consumed, the amount of, the volume, literally the volume of data which is consumed by the average operating system today is massively larger than it was, 10 or 20 years ago. And the reality of that means that it's placing a greater load on the processing components of the computer, the RAM, the central processing unit. And so they have to work harder in order to execute this code. Now, processors today are much more powerful and much more capable than they were a few years ago. And that is likely to continue to improve in the coming years. But the reality is, if the code is written efficiently, if we can place a focus on writing clean code, then it places a reduced load on those processors, on the parts of the computer which actually do the work. And so then that directly correlates with the energy consumption of the entire device. So you can see how important it is to actually write good code. It's something which is important and hasn't really been given the kind of attention that it deserves. If you think about the latest version of the operating system that you're using, let's not say it for trademark purposes. But what you often find is that the problems which you experienced in a previous operating system by the same organization tend to crop up again in a future iteration of the software. The reason that happens is because instead of code being written from the ground up, you have a lot of code recycling. Now, I understand, and it's quite easy to understand how that's beneficial in terms of a time-saving perspective. But the unfortunate aspect of that is, if you're copying code which has been used before and has errors which are known or unknown, then you're also copying those errors into the new iteration of the software that you're using. And so then the systems are having to work harder to address those issues, or you're having to have new revisions of code written over to address those issues also. And so you just end up in this position where excessive amounts of energy are being used to do things that could have been avoided entirely by having clean code. So that's why we place a lot of emphasis on the importance of writing clean code. That's really a concern. And I think, especially within Zanshuri, within our company, one thing that is very important to us is we're not just about selling computers and selling products, and disregarding existing equipment. We work very closely with a number of IT recycling companies, which actually take in existing equipment from our clients, prospective clients, and so on, and they'll literally recycle that in a clean, correct manner. They wipe system. They make sure that there's no potential for data loss or anything of that nature, and they will extract the necessary, potentially useful elements of that hardware, which can be used again in terms of plastics, precious metals, and so on and so forth. And that's very important to us because it's the entire life cycle which matters. There's no point us talking about being an environmentally conscious company if we purposely turn our backs on a significant part of what we do, of what we should be involved in. Yes, selling new computers is wonderful, but what happens to the hundreds of thousands or millions of systems which are in existence and in use today? There has to be an understanding, a direction, and a plan for addressing those problems. We see the incidence of e-waste now is quite prevalent in the media, but it's a problem that should not exist. It's a problem that can be addressed quite easily, and so we are working actively with governments and with private sector organizations to address that issue and to make sure that it becomes the norm, not the exception.
This is true, and I know a lot of I think that's very important because I know Apple. I just mentioned them, but I know they do. They have this. They're quite big on the recycling program. Which is impressive. And it's amazing to know you're actually big on it. Working with multiple parties. Now, that said, I know we did touch on software engineers, and I think this is something that will be very interesting to a lot of people as well. Again, please don't forget to throw in your questions. We all know, and we've all heard about this AI of a thing, AI. How do you see this shift in the role of artificial intelligence in sustainable computing? How can AI, and should I say machine learning, help optimize computer systems, for energy efficiency and obviously drive the development of eco-friendly technologies? What's your take on that? Do you see AI, with this clean code business, iteration of codes, do you think AI is literally going to take over that space from your angle? Do you get AI, or do your servers even, is it in your servers that we have all the AI algorithms and learning taking place,
Yeah. We've been working very closely with a number of entities in the AI space, hardware and software. And I think that a lot of people don't realize just how deeply entrenched AI is in our world today already. So we're already at the point where we are heavily dependent on AI in different forms. And that's likely to be something that, we're just going to have to stick with. So it's something that's important to be addressed correctly. It has to be addressed in a manner which is mindful of potential, whether that's good or bad. There has to be an awareness of how things could work. And so that's really important to us. But when you're talking about AI and code, yes, it's quite common now for AI to be called on to write, elements of code, whether they're snippets of code or entire, reams of code, as it were. And I think that we're not yet at the point where AI can be depended on to just do it without any intervention. Yes, it can, but we still know that in order for things to be done correctly, it's necessary for humans to be involved, to an extent. When you look, for example, when you're talking about AI-generated graphics, I don't know if you've had any kind of familiarity with that, but there are issues with AI understanding just how many appendages an individual should have. How many fingers, how many eyes, ears, even just So there are issues which still need to be addressed. There are small problems which we cannot simply hand over to software robots, to AI, and expect that it's just going to work out automatically. No. So yeah, it's going to increase. It's inevitable, but it should never be allowed to be something which is able to take precedence without human intervention.
So something interesting you said it should not be allowed. So is there a chance some people want to allow it to take over things?
There is, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are lazy. Not everybody, of course. Some people like to cut corners, unfortunately. That's just the world that we live in today. And so if you have the opportunity to, ask a computer to do the work for you, and then you're just going to depend on that without reviewing it, verbatim, that could be very dangerous. Especially in situations where, lives are involved with healthcare, things that really matter, things that are very important. And so I think it's because we have an awareness that those kind of things can happen, it places more of an onus on humans, on the human operator, to ensure that things are done correctly. We can't simply hand over when we know that things are not yet 100%.
Yeah. In other words, I'm hearing there's a lot of fine-tuning that takes place, and I think this touches on the next point I want to discuss. Policy and regulation play a crucial role here.
Absolutely.
So how do you see this? Are there any policies or government sort of initiatives that help, with analyzing the role for government and regulatory bodies, more or less, to promote sustainable computing practices? And are there incentives as well? So twofold, government policies playing a role around AI. And of course, how does the government support sustainability initiatives like yours?
Yes, I think that it's very much in its early stages in terms of gestation, really. I think that governments are now becoming increasingly aware of, the energy use that is, separate from, something that's as obvious as the automotive industry, as obvious as, airplanes and, international travel, agriculture even. So our dependence on data just makes it necessary for, increasing numbers of data centers to be built all over the world. And obviously, computers in organizations in every aspect of daily life, really. So again, being involved in the all-party parliamentary group, as we have been since 2018, I believe, it makes it very interesting for us to actually see where things are going. With AI and machine learning, those are still something which is, very new in the eyes of the government, particularly in the public sector. So in terms of legislation and awareness, that's something which really does need a lot more attention paid to it. We're seeing massive strides in terms of development, capability, new realizations which are coming to market. But the pace of regulation is not keeping pace with that at all. In actual fact, it's falling quite some way behind. So it's necessary to really review how things are being done. We see the discussions taking place in the media. You hear about, observations from people such as Elon Musk, for example, who, have a fantastic awareness of the potential of AI. And, those comments are absolutely valid, because the reality is that if this is not managed correctly, then it can only be managed incorrectly. And nobody wants that to happen.
Very well said, actually. Yeah, I like the way you put that there. It's either managed well or managed incorrectly, which again poses a lot of concerns. So I think it'll be useful to. I noticed behind you you have some amazing screens, and I think that's all powered by your computers, right? And I think this computer is currently powering 6 screens. Do you actually? I mean, is that not? Do you need 6 screens, Chib? Like, do you mind showing the people on the call? Actually, just behind him, he's literally got like 6 screens, all powered by one computer. Do you need that many screens?
I think for me, it comes down to the way that I work, as an individual. I think that a lot of people say that it's difficult to multitask. And I'd agree, it is difficult to multitask, but it isn't too difficult to switch from one task to another, and to have a plan. It's like, for the way that I work, I have an in tray and an out tray, but those are not physical. Those are digital, they're virtual, they're on my screens. So it actually helps me to be a much more productive individual than I would be otherwise. But I think I'm at capacity now. I'm not looking at adding any more to my desk.
Yeah, I think Robert and I are on the same page. I need a few more screens. I literally have one here, with multiple windows scattered around. No, very, very interesting. Sorry, I just keep getting calls. This is the problem. When people want to join the call, they forget we are on this session live, and they try to call to ask, how do you join? And all the instructions out there. So apologies, I just got a little bit distracted there. So I think for me, it's useful to know, so how can if people are interested in your computers, how do they go about getting them? I know you obviously have your website. Is it accessible to the public, or is it for businesses? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is accessible to the public. We have an online sales capability with, online processing. We're on all the social media platforms as well, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. And, we're very easy to find. We serve the corporate sector, we serve the public sector, individuals, educational establishments, healthcare. In the early days of starting the business, I was very focused on helping emerging markets and, I guess you'd call third world countries, really. But I thought it was important to develop a capability which would allow those nations and those parts of the world to compete on an equal footing with the developed world, with the Western world. And the main issue, aside from connectivity, which is being addressed, was power. Now, short of actually going into those nations and laying, valid, reliable power grids, you could actually deliver solutions which use that power much more efficiently. And that's the course of action that I decided to do. So we've been involved in, developing hospitals, for example, in parts of rural Africa. We've been involved in planning for rollouts in South America. We work very closely with a number of Asian countries and also North America, and of course here, the UK and the EU. And what's quite clear is that, yes, that technology is absolutely valid and usable in environments where you don't have reliable grid capability. But even here, where in the Western world, where you do have reliable grid, it makes sense to make more efficient use of that energy. Even when we're talking about renewable energy, just because it's renewable and potentially more, easily accessed, it doesn't mean that it's okay to waste it. I like to think about, what would the world look like in the next 20, 30 or 40 years? And what kind of legacy are we going to leave for our children, our children's children? Now, that's not something which is very common in terms of a way of thinking in technology circles, but I think it's important. I think it really does matter. And if we can start addressing those issues by implementing more efficient, more green solutions today to everything that we do, not just the cars that we drive, not just the light bulbs that we have in our homes, but the way that we work, the way that we, transact and share and consume information, that will be the key to making a real difference. That's why it's so important.
Yeah. I really like how you just broke that down, because it's got me thinking. I don't want to call names, but you have various mobile phone companies that even manufacture mobile phones annually, which I think is somehow a waste. Do they really need to make new phones every year, with little incremental improvements? Isn't that sort of going against the whole concept of sustainability? You just got me thinking there, and I think Kemi has also just thrown in a question from someone. How can businesses or organizations measure the environmental impact of their computing practices? Well, I mean, actually, it's funny you say that, actually, because I know I did some research earlier, and I'll just read this out, and then Chib, of course, you sort of chip in, So let's say you have a 60-watt laptop and it's used for around 8 hours a day. That's roughly around 60 watts times 8 hours, which is 480 watts per hour per day, which is 0.48 kilowatts hour, technically, yeah? Now, I wouldn't go into all the details because I don't want to bore you all, but so the daily carbon footprint from using this sort of laptop would be 0.48 kilowatts multiplied by 0.4066 kilogram of the CO2 kilowatts, which roughly is 0.192 kilogram of the CO2. Now, the daily carbon footprint with more efficient laptop is then 0.24 kilowatts multiplied by the 0.4806 kilowatts, which is roughly 0.097 kilograms per CO2. So basically, by making a 50% more efficient computer, we are saving 0.19, so basically 0.2 kilogram CO2, which is roughly per day, which is very impressive, and this is just on one system. So if you have 10, that's like literally a kilogram of CO2 being saved. So very interesting. So let's see, we have a few questions here. So one here from Robert, he says here, what about the potential to develop hardware for retrofitting new devices into vehicles? Is this possible? Or is this deemed that just one device in the vehicle wouldn't have a big enough impact? I'm thinking sat-nav, stereos, and other equipment that goes into commercial vehicles. Very good question, actually. Chib, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question. I mean, before we set about manufacturing our own equipment, we were looking at the capability, the potential of retrofitting solutions which were greener in existing hardware. Now, admittedly, we were working on the server system, so these massive computers which you'd find in data centers. And then that whittled its way down to desktop systems, tower systems, and latterly laptops. And the reality is these kind of capabilities can be retro-engineered in a multitude of existing products. We've experimented with things as varied as microwave ovens, fridge freezers, home stereo equipment, and automotive installations also. And the reality is it's absolutely doable. Yes, there are some systems where you're having to deal with proprietary cabling, connectors, and installations of that nature. But what we're seeing now is it's almost been a, just as you said, you have this great mobile phone and you're wondering why is it that, the suggestion has been made that you should upgrade it every year or every couple of years, really, when, that realistically you could use it for much longer, as long as you don't drop it, really. And so the reality is that the only reason that isn't more widespread is because it's quite clear from a commercial perspective, companies want to make more money. And I think that the priority for Zanshuri as well, it's not simply, just to make more money. We want to actually demonstrate the validity, the long-term importance and relevance of our ethos. And if that means that we're selling less products, then fine. If it means that what we're doing is more beneficial to more people, then we've achieved our goals. So yes, retro-engineering is so important. It's something that we've always had an eye on. And even today, we still look at how we can work with organizations to improve their existing solutions without going through the whole process of throwing them out and replacing them with new systems when those existing solutions still have some kind of merit really.
Mm.
So yeah, we haven't really gone into automotive as in depth as has been put in that question there, but it's definitely something which we can look at and something which I think should become more normal, across the industries, definitely.
Very, very well put together, Chib, actually. I do agree. Robert, would you say that answers your question? Yeah, thumbs up. Yes, I love the thumbs up. Yeah. So before we close the call, I'm just wondering if there's any more questions from anyone. If there's any more questions, please feel free to.
There is actually. I'm sending one now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kemi.
Yes, you're welcome.
Are eco-friendly computing solutions cost-saving, or does it have the potential to be in the foreseeable future to be cost-saving? That's right. Are your computers cheaper than a normal computer?
Exactly. That's a straightforward way.
Let's just say in general.
Yeah. I think next question. No. I'm joking. No, we're not yet at the point where our computers are, we don't yet have price equity with, many of the other manufacturer systems. The way that our clients actually able to save money is through the use of our systems. And so the total cost of ownership, or shall we say the return on investment, is realized much more quickly in terms of the energy consumption as a consequence. Now, as we grow and as our purchasing power increases, then we will get to the point where we are able to have price parity with other manufacturers. And at that point, then, it's quite clear that our solution will be seen as, the best solution. Using the analogy of the automotive sector, for example, electric cars are generally more expensive than fossil-fueled cars at the moment. But as they become more common, as they become ubiquitous, we will see price parity, and we will potentially get to a point where electric cars are generally cheaper to buy than fossil-fuel cars. But we're already at the point where electric vehicles are cheaper to run, significantly cheaper to run than fossil fuel cars. And so that's the kind of position that we're in, really. As we grow, definitely things will come down in terms of price, but in terms of the realized cost savings, for most of our clients, they are immediate. And that's where it counts. Yeah.
That is very impressive. So you actually save, you already start saving money from the get-go. In the long run, it's a lot cheaper than a laptop. So yeah, you're right, return on investment. That's very true. I see here we have, Kemi, just to make sure that person is happy with the answer, if not just prompt us. I see another question here. Are touch screens hugely more energy hungry? I've never thought about that, actually.
Well, yeah, that depends. I mean, you have there are a number of different types of touch screens which exist at the moment. And just as, with any other technology, the technology is improving all the time. So, back in, I should say, when we had the early capacitive touch screens, they were very power hungry. They were very inefficient. And it's not our sector. We don't actually produce touch screens at all. But it's something that we have some awareness of. So we're at the point where they're definitely becoming more efficient. The type of panels which are used in those screens are now designed to be more efficient, to produce less heat, and to use less energy as a consequence of all of that. So yeah, as with anything in the technology space, the efficiencies are there. They're improving all the time, definitely.
That's interesting. I know some big manufacturers don't actually have touch screens, and could that be as a result of energy? Just thinking out loud. I don't want to call the brand, but I'm sure we all know they make iPads. They make iPads or tablets. They have computers as well, but I find your computer screens are actually not touch screen, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this sort of brings us towards the end. We literally have like another 5 more minutes before the hour. Just want to make sure we're happy. If anybody has any more questions, any thoughts, I would take silence as no more questions. And I think at this point, I'd like to thank everyone. I want to thank all of you who are regularly on the call. I want to thank you all who share this event. We have this, our webinars. Thank you all so much. And, we would be doing this every month. And next month, we're hoping to have a female on here, who would showcase what she does. So we're currently discussing a number of people, but obviously it's just sort of everyone's diary is crazy. So this is why for us it's really an honor to have people like Chib on the call. Last month we had another chap from Nwokonkor who's the head of the Americas and Europe market. So very, very important people who are very busy, but they still make time to showcase what they do to each and every one of us, on a sort of platform that is free and for everyone. So thank you so much, Chib. Thank you all very much. You guys don't hesitate to constantly visit our website, oclasconsulting.com. There's a lot of information over there, lots of articles, lots of learning, a lot of learning material there, from ESG to strategy to optimization to marketing to leadership. Because we pride ourselves as content knowledge leaders. So this helps us, position things in such a way that it's very much relatable to your day-to-day. And then obviously a number of you might be asking, how can we get, if we want to utilize Oclas services? We have various sort of options on how we can support you, be it startups to mature multinational companies. We are here for you. There are ways we could do this. And again, you might be wondering, well, why people like Chib or why businesses like Chib's business? And the reason is because we complement each other. We are not technology geniuses, but we know how businesses should function. We understand technology and we know how to make processes work. So by harnessing all of this, we're able to sort of bring the best solutions out there and the best technology out there to help achieve our clients, objective. And this is where people like Chib come in from a competing perspective. So I see Kenny has just sort of shared our LinkedIn. Please connect with us, reach out to any of us. It's not one of those, you're not allowed to contact anybody. Feel free, Chib's LinkedIn details there, my LinkedIn details there. If you have any more questions, just feel free to reach out to any of us. We try to be as approachable as we possibly can. Or of course, if you email admin@Oclas Group, if you have any specifics or you need to have any meetings urgently, we're more than happy to make this work virtually or face-to-face. Once again, thank you all so much. I will be handing over to Kemi now to sort of close the call, but I'm sure she has one or two things to say, but thank you all very much. And it's been a pleasure. Kemi, over to you.
Thank you, Sheyi. Yeah, we're about to say thank you much for this. Yes, you're very much welcome. I'd also like to ask Sheyi, would this video be available on our social media platforms?
Yes, yeah, it would be shared. We literally tend to let this probably go live before close of business. So it would be on our website and then of course on social media platforms. So you're more than welcome to revisit it, share it, comment, and let's just create more visibility because we want people to really, learn. I don't know about people on the call, but I definitely have learned something, and I'm sure one or two people might have picked up something as well from the call. And of course, this is directly with the owners of the businesses, so it's very, very helpful. And you can see the passion, you can see the interest, and you've heard the journey, right? So yes, it would be on it would be available to everyone by close of business today. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sheyi. I'd like to ask Chib, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, it's really been a pleasure to be here today. I'm so happy to have been invited, and I look forward to potentially being involved in and watching your future discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chib. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. It was amazing.
Thank you so much, Jura.
You're welcome, Jura.
Have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, Jura. Take care.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We will see you all at our next event. Have a very great week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.